So whether you're an illustrator, graphic designer, or just someone who likes to use Photoshop for the fun of it, everyone at some point will come across the brush tool. So in this video, what we're going to do is take a look at some of the key shortcuts we can use when it comes to brushes in Photoshop. Great, so we're in Photoshop, and the first thing we need to do, of course, is be able to bring up the brush tool itself. So the shortcut we're going to learn just to be able to bring up the brush tool, it's the same for both Windows and Mac, and it's just the letter B on your keyboard. And that should bring up the brush tool. You can also use these shortcuts for the clone stamp tool. So the shortcut for the clone stamp tool is S on your keyboard. You can also use it for the Erasrer tool, which is E on your keyboard. You can use it for a whole variety of different tools which all use a brush feature. But what we're going to do, of course, is stick to the brush tool itself, so the letter B on our keyboard, and we're going to start to paint in our boat that we've drawn here. So the first shortcut for the brush tool essentially allows us to change the size and hardness of our brush. So if, for example, I was trying to color in the body of this boat, I'm going to quickly switch over to my graphics tablet. This works for both a mouse and a graphics tablet, by the way, so you don't need to worry about which one you're using. So for example, if I quickly create a new layer, I might decide I want to start with the exposed part of the body, which is an underwater at the moment. So I'll select my first color, which is this brown. The easiest way to select that is just by pressing I on your keyboard, so you get the eyedropper tool, and then going back to the brush tool with the shortcut B, which we've already learned. So for example, if I start to color in the body of this boat, now this might not be the most effective way. Obviously we can use the paint bucket tool too. I've already made a video on how that one works, but if you're interested, then do check out the link in the description below. So obviously the first issue we come across when we're painting is we want to be able to decrease the size of our brush so we don't extend the edges of our drawing. So if I quickly undo that. Now the easiest way to decrease the size of our brush is by holding in Ctrl and Option, or that will be Ctrl and Alt for Windows, and just making sure you have both of those held in. If you hold your mouse button down, your brush should go red, and on the right hand side we get some new parameters. We get the diameter, which at the moment for me is 94 pixels, and we also get the hardness of the brush, which is at the moment 100%. Now in order to decrease the size of our brush, all we have to do is move our mouse to the left. So I'm using my graphics tablet, so I'm moving my pen to the left at the moment. So as you can see, that decreases the size of the brush all the way to just 1 pixel. Now in order to increase it, like you might think, all we have to do is go to the right, and we can increase the size of our brush, or the diameter of our brush, whichever you prefer to say. So for example, at this point here, I want to decrease the size of my brush, so I can decrease it partly, fill that bit in. I can keep going just by holding in Ctrl and Option, or Ctrl and Alt for Windows. And as you can see, this now actually allows me to go ahead and complete this part of the drawing. I can do the same for this bottom part here. And as you can see, we've now been able to complete this part of the body. Now, for example, some of this can be quite tedious work. For example, if I select this color right here, which is the color I'm going to use for my sail itself, and go back to the brush tool by pressing B on my keyboard. As you can see, if I want to follow this edge, it's already got quite a straight line. And I'm obviously having to put quite a lot of effort in order to draw a straight line. And one of the easiest way to draw a straight line when you're on the brush tool itself is just by holding Shift on your keyboard. So if you draw a dot just anywhere on your canvas, as an example for now, if you hold Shift on your keyboard and create another dot anywhere on your canvas, Photoshop will actually connect the two dots together. So obviously when we're going around and tracing parts of our drawing, it might be quicker just to create dots, which create that outline nice and quickly, instead of having to freeform it where we might accidentally go over the edges of our outlines. So obviously what we can do is just hold Shift. So I can start here, I can hold Shift, create multiple points like so, and quite quickly go around the edge of my entire drawing. I can decrease the size of my brush, Control Option, and then as you can see, I can quickly complete that. As you can see, I'm just literally creating loads of dots by holding Shift. And there we go, we've filled in our entire sail. Great, so what if we want to be able to actually control the hardness of our brush? So for example, if I select a new color, let's go for this red at the top here, and go back to the brush tool. So as you can see, at the moment, if I draw a line, there's no feather at the edges of our brush. So at the moment, there's a clear cut between the red and the white areas here. And this is because our brush is set to 100% hardness. So if we want to be able to control the hardness of our brush, all we have to do is once again holding Control and Option, or Control and Alt for Windows once again. hold in our left mouse button, and then move our cursor upwards in order to decrease the hardness of our brush, or move it down in order to increase the hardness of our brush. And as you can see, the hardness can vary from 0% all the way to 100%. So if I decrease the hardness of my brush and quickly draw a new line, as you can see, this time there is a strong feather between the edges of our brush. So that's the easy shortcut for being able to increase or decrease the hardness of our brush in Photoshop. Great, so the last shortcut I also want to show you is how to easily be able to change the opacity of our brush. So for this, what I'm going to quickly do is actually fill in the bottom part of our body for our boat. So I'm just going to quickly select our second color. Now because it's under the water, what I want to do is make it slightly darker. And I might also just quickly use the red and fill in this bottom part here too. Obviously, when you're doing something like this, I'd highly recommend you do all of these different areas on different layers so you can always rearrange them. Just for the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to quickly do it all on one layer, just because that's nice and quick. So as you can see, I've quickly filled in our boat. I might also just quickly do this back wing here. There we go. So as you can see, just by combining all of those shortcuts, you can quickly illustrate anything in Photoshop. So like I said, the last thing we're going to do is actually cover the opacity of our brush. So I'm going to quickly select this lighter blue that we have here. And what we're going to do is actually fill in the water around our boat. Now if I quickly go back to the brush tool, and normally what you do if you'd want to be able to change the opacity of your brush is you go to the top parameters here, you'd find opacity and use the slider to the left in order to decrease the opacity, or to the right in order to increase our opacity. But obviously that can be a bit tedious if every 2 seconds we want to go back and change the opacity. So an easier way in order to actually change the opacity is just by pressing numbers on our keyboard. So if, for example, I wanted to set the opacity to 50%, all I have to do is press the number 5 on my keyboard. As you can see, the opacity is now 50%. Likewise, if, for example, I want to set the opacity to, say, 80%, all I have to do is press 8 on my keyboard. As you can see, it's now 80%. So if I quickly draw something, as you can see, the opacity is slightly lower. Some of these colors are already blending through. If I set the opacity even lower, so for example, let's go to 30% by pressing 3 on our keyboard. As you can see, the opacity is already much, much lower. So let's quickly undo that because I'm not quite sure what that is. If you want to be a bit more specific, all you have to do is type the full number in using your keyboard. So let's say, for example, we wanted a number of, 57. All you have to do is press 5 and then 7 in quick succession. And as you can see, it now sets it to 57%. Again, if we went for another number, let's say 94, we press 9 and 4. And as you can see, this has set the opacity to 94%. If you want 100%, all you have to do is press 1 and 0, 0. And as you can see, that gives us 100% opacity. So for this water, let's set the opacity to, let's say, 40%. So just press 4 once. And then what we can do is just go around and fill in the rest of the water around our boat. So as you can see, I've now added the water and the opacity of the brush was slightly lower, so we can slightly blend through to the other colors in the background. So those were the 3 quick shortcuts for using the brush tool in Adobe Photoshop. If you're interested in learning how you can draw shapes in Adobe Photoshop using the pen tool, then do check out the video in the top right-hand corner of the end screen. And otherwise, do remember to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed the content, and do remember to subscribe to the channel to make sure you never miss a new Photoshop and Illustrator tutorial.